That night, the electricity went out, and the house was plunged into darkness. I wrapped a towel around my body and made my way into the bedroom. In the silence, I thought I had reached my husband's bed. I called out to him a few times, but I didn't get a response. I gently touched his shoulder, but suddenly, I was pulled down onto the bed. William pressed me down, and I felt his hot breath on my skin. In the darkness, all my senses seemed to be amplified. I felt the warmth of his body and his strong but longing gestures. I felt his warmth and strong, longing gestures. A feeling of both shyness and trembling spread throughout my body like an electric current running down my spine. The way he touched me and his body pressed against me seemed to pull my entire consciousness into a hazy space with only the feeling and the strong beating of my heart. I struggled slightly to say something, but the words were stuck in my throat. That was also the moment that opened the door to forbidden territory. I never expected to hear these stories. They gradually revealed secrets, pulling me into a vortex of emotions, guilt, and relationships that shouldn't exist. It all started from that fateful night. Hello everyone, I'm Sophia. I'm 30 and I've got simple dreams of a happy home. My life has had its ups and downs, and I've had to make difficult choices. But I believe I've found my destination when I met William. He's a mature man of nearly 50, and I'm currently living with him. William is 50, but still looks great. He has a calm demeanor and a deep sense of purpose. He's been a single dad for years, so he's got a lot of patience. I feel like he really loves me. William loves me with all his heart and always tries to be a great husband and father. He often cooks in his spare time, cleans the house, and even remembers my little hobbies like my love for hydrangeas or my obsession with classic movies, which makes me feel more appreciated and loved than ever. Lucas Williams, William's stepson, is also a great guy. He's 24 and already has a handsome appearance with outstanding height and a muscular body. He's a young guy, but he's got a lot of life experience. I was worried at first that he'd be distant or have trouble accepting me as his stepmother, but he was really friendly and welcoming. He always treated me with respect, even calling me Sophia in a loving way to help us connect. From the start, I felt really happy in this small family. In the mornings, the whole family would get together at the dining table. William would often make coffee for me, and Lucas never forgot to help me prepare breakfast. We had a lot of fun together during the meal. I realized I was really lucky to be part of this house. In the evenings, we would sit together in the living room, sharing stories of the day. Lucas would talk about his work and future plans, while William would smile and listen to his son with pride in his eyes. Looking at them, I felt the family bond. I had always wanted William to be there for me, and he was. He helped me adjust to my new life. He showed affection in front of his son, like holding my hand when we watched a movie or adjusting my scarf when it was cold. Those small actions made me feel loved and protected. I was also happy that Lucas didn't feel awkward about our closeness. He even joked, "Finally, Dad found someone who knows how to manage this grumpy old man." As time went on, I kept telling myself that I had found the right place to stop. William and Lucas gave me the feeling of a real family where love and care were always present, but somehow, gradually, a feeling of discomfort began to appear. At first, I couldn't name it. It was just that when I was sitting alone, my heart felt heavy as if something was wrong. I tried to avoid it, telling myself that I was probably just tired or stressed because of my new life. But as time went on, that feeling got bigger and bigger. It was like something inside me was trying to explode or be released. One afternoon, while I was killing time on Facebook, I came across an article about the physiology of women and men in marriage. Every word in the article seemed to touch me and describe exactly what I was going through. The article talked about how married life changes when intimate moments gradually become less frequent. It explains that sometimes a lack of intimacy can make a relationship feel dull and unstable. I realized that was the reason for my uncomfortable feelings. William and I haven't had any affectionate moments together for a long time. We still love and care for each other, but the intimate physical connection has gradually disappeared. It's been washed away by the hustle and bustle of life. I remember the evenings when William was busy with work and I buried my head in books or on the phone to fill the void. We talked and shared about that. I had a day like any other, but there were no more intimate gestures like before. After reading the article, I thought, that must be it. Maybe the uncomfortable feeling in me came from the lack of intimacy with William. Thinking of this, I decided to change and talk to him about it. I wanted to rekindle our relationship and find back the sweet moments we both had that evening. I prepared more carefully than usual. I chose a light silk dress, not too fussy, but enough to highlight my femininity. I combed my hair and sprayed on a little perfume, then stood in front of the mirror to check I was looking okay. I took a deep breath to calm myself down. I was feeling a bit nervous and worried. Would William understand what I wanted to say? Would he think I was being too demanding when I entered the living room? William was sitting on the sofa reading the newspaper. He looked up when he saw me. His eyes were slightly surprised, but quickly turned into a smile. He said, "You look beautiful," in a really sincere tone, which warmed my heart. I sat down next to him, trying to think of something to say. We chatted about light things at first, like the day, his work, and little things around the house. But the more we talked, the harder it became for me to bring up the main issue. Finally, when William noticed I was hesitating, I gathered my courage and said softly, "William, I want to tell you something. Lately, I feel like we've grown. We've been a bit distant recently, not just emotionally, but in terms of closeness. I think it's been a while since we've had any real time together, and I feel like it's affecting me. Maybe you feel it too, but we just haven't said it." William was silent for a moment, his eyes softening, and put the newspaper aside to face me. "Sophia, I understand what you're saying. In fact, I feel it too. Work has been so busy lately, and perhaps I've been a bit neglectful recently, haven't I? I'm sorry if you feel unloved or unappreciated." His words made me feel better, and the atmosphere between us seemed to become warmer. William took my hand, and his eyes were sincere. "I know we need to spend more time together. I really cherish what we have, and I don't want to lose it." That night William and I made love. He was gentle and caring, like in the early days when we were still passionately together. I felt the connection return. In that moment, I thought that the feeling of insecurity and discomfort in my heart would disappear. But when it was all over, as I lay back on the bed staring at the dark ceiling, that feeling was still there, still threshing about in my heart. It was like something deep that had not been resolved, like a missing piece that prevented me from being completely comfortable. I couldn't understand myself. Hadn't I found the closeness I wanted yet? That frustration, like an undercurrent, still crept into I thought about William. He was fast asleep, looking peaceful. I was still tossing and turning. I realized that the problem might be deeper than just physical intimacy. There was something in my soul that was troubling me. I didn't know what to do to fill the void. I didn't want to think any further, so I stepped into the bathroom and let the warm water wash away all my worries. After I finished showering, I felt a little lighter, as if I had just lifted a part of an invisible burden. I stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, with the faint scent of shower gel making me feel more relaxed. But when I stepped into the middle of a hallway, the house was plunged into darkness. The electricity went out, and the whole space seemed to be swallowed by the suffocating silence. The light from the night light in the room also went out, leaving a thick darkness. I hesitated for a moment. I felt my sweaty skin begin to wrinkle in the cool air. I groped my way towards the bedroom, my hand gently sliding across the wall to find support in the darkness. I called William softly, but heard no response. The house was too quiet, only the wind whistling softly through the window. I was Sir. That William was still lying in bed. My feet touched the edge of the bed, and I sat down, reaching out to touch his shoulder. My fingertips touched him, and I was pulled back down onto the bed. I said, "William," but my voice was cut off by his hot breath on my skin in the darkness. All my senses seemed to awaken. William's body was pressed against mine, strong and determined, as if he wanted to engulf me completely. I could clearly feel the warmth of his body, his rapid breathing close to my ear, and his eager, intense gestures. My skin felt like it was being electrified. Every time he touched me, I felt shy and nervous, and I couldn't control my thoughts. Everything inside me was suddenly caught in a whirlwind of emotions, vague, intense, and irresistible. The way William touched me and pulled me close made me feel lost in the darkness. My heartbeat was so strong that it seemed to drown out the sound of the wind outside. I tried to struggle slightly, not to escape, but to regain some sense of reason, but it was William. It was William's hot breath and determination that made all my thoughts disappear. I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't say a word. My throat was choked with emotion in the dark room. Time seemed to stop. There were only two people in the room, connected. I felt the intense desire in the way he held me, and it awakened a deep instinct within me. For the first time in a long time, I felt myself enveloped in warmth and connection. When it was over, I lay back, feeling tired but also strange. The light from the bulb suddenly came on when the power was back on, pulling me back to reality. I closed my eyes for a moment to get used to the light and then turned around, only to freeze when I saw the face next to me. It wasn't William, it was Lucas. "Lucas!" I exclaimed, my voice lost in surprise. Lucas looked at me, his eyes showing confusion mixed with a bit of guilt, but also filled with something unnameable. "Sister Sophia," Lucas said softly, then quickly sat up, avoiding my gaze. I asked, confused and angry. "Why didn't you say anything? Why are you here?" Lucas looked at me. His eyes were filled with conflict and indescribable emotions. I was almost shouting, my voice shaking with confusion. "Do you know what you just did? This is an unacceptable mistake." Lucas bowed his head, his voice choked as if he was trying to find an explanation. "I know, I don't want to justify my actions, but you know, every time I see you and Dad together, I wish I was loved like that. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I couldn't control my feelings anymore. I'm sorry." I felt a flood of emotions, confusion, anger, and something like pity. "Lucas, I'm not the one who can fill the void in your life. I understand your mixed feelings, but this isn't right. It can't happen again. Do you understand?" Lucas raised his head. His eyes were full of guilt and despair. "I just want you to keep your distance so you don't hurt anyone else. That's all I'm asking, Lucas." You nodded, your eyes filled with remorse. "I'm sorry, sis. I'll keep my distance, and I promise it won't happen again." I turned and left Lucas's room, feeling heavy-hearted. When the door closed behind me, I felt as if all my strength had been drained. I sat down on the hallway, my back against the cold door, my head in my hands. The images that had just happened kept swirling in my mind, making it impossible for me to escape them. I didn't want to think about what had just happened. The feeling of guilt was like a stone pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I couldn't understand how things had come to this. At the climax, when I didn't know it was Lucas there was a brief moment when I let myself be swept away. A part of me wanted to disappear immediately and escape from a situation I couldn't stop thinking about William, the man who had always loved and trusted me. I felt guilty towards him, like a flood sweeping away all reason. I hugged myself tightly, my shoulders shaking, my eyes staring into space. I couldn't focus on anything. I don't know how long I stood there, but when the numb feeling in my legs pulled me back to reality, I took a deep breath and told myself to stand up. I needed to face the truth. I couldn't stay here forever. I stood up, adjusting the towel around me. Heavy footsteps led me back to the bedroom. The door opened, and I saw that the room was bathed in the soft light from the nightlight. William was still lying on the bed, his sleep as peaceful as ever, unaware of the chaos that had just happened outside. I stood there for a long time looking at him. His face was calm. His lips were slightly pursed as if he was dreaming of something beautiful. My heart clenched. How could I let this happen? How could I let my weakness and Lucas's lack of control destroy everything we had built together? I walked lightly to the bed, lay down next to William, and closed my eyes, trying to clear my mind of all thoughts to find some peace. But the image of Lucas kept coming to mind. I couldn't get his conflicted eyes and apologetic words out of my mind. I knew that from that moment on, everything would never be the same again. Since that night, the relationship between Lucas and I had become strange. Although neither of us said it, the distance clearly grew. Lucas became reserved and less talkative whenever I was around. He always avoided my eyes and kept his distance in every gesture and every word. As for me, every time I met Lucas, an awkward feeling rose in my heart. I didn't know how to behave so that everything I thought things would return to normal, but perhaps that was impossible. William still didn't know anything. He still loved Lucas and me as usual, but I knew both Lucas and I were trying to hide our mixed feelings. Family meals became more silent. The jokes between Lucas and me seemed to have disappeared. The atmosphere in the house became heavier. William seemed to feel it too, but he didn't ask. He only occasionally looked at Lucas and me with a puzzled expression. One morning when the whole family was having breakfast, Lucas suddenly stopped. He put his coffee cup down on the table. His eyes were more serious than ever, and they got both William and my attention. "Dad," Sophia, Lucas said in a calm but determined voice, "I've thought a lot and I want to tell you about a decision I've made." William put down his knife and fork and looked at his son, surprised. "What do you mean?" Lucas looked straight at his father, then turned to me for a moment. "I think it's time for me to leave. I need a new environment to learn and grow. I can't continue like this here." His words left me speechless, even though he didn't directly say the reason. I knew what Lucas was implying, but I tried to stay calm. William frowned a little, confused. "Where do you want to go? You're still learning well at your current company." "I found a course in another city where I can further develop my skills," Lucas explained, his voice even, but his eyes were strained. It was a decision I thought about carefully. I needed some space, and I thought it was best for everyone. I bowed my head, not daring to look at William or Lucas. His words seemed to stab me with a heavy sense of guilt. William sighed, but finally nodded. His voice was low. "If that's what you want, I respect your decision. But remember, this house will always be waiting for you to return." Lucas smiled a small, heavy smile. "I know, Dad. And thank you, both of you, and Sophia. I'm really sorry if I've caused any inconvenience to anyone with my departure." I looked up, trying to find the right words. "Lucas, if this is what's best for you, I just hope you find what you need. I wish you all the best too." Lucas nodded, his eyes meeting mine for a moment, then turning away. The day Lucas left, the whole house was quieter than usual. William helped him pack his things. His eyes showed the sadness of a father. I stood by the window. As I watched Lucas's car roll away, I felt a mixture of emotions. I knew that this departure was not only about Lucas finding a future, but also about him letting go of feelings he shouldn't have, so that we could all move on from things that no one had been willing to say out loud when Lucas left. When he left, the house became much quieter. William still kept up his usual lifestyle, but his eyes often seemed to be looking into the void that Lucas had left behind. He often mentioned his son, expressing pride in the Lucas was off on a new journey, and I just smiled and agreed with him. But deep down, I still felt a mix of relief and guilt. As time passed, life gradually returned to its old rhythm. William and I found our connection in the little things of everyday life, but every time I think back to what happened, I can't help but wonder if I had been more careful. If I hadn't let myself get lost in the dark corners of my emotions, would things have gone differently? I've learned that mistakes are part of life. Mistakes happen. They can hurt you and affect the people you love the most. I've learned the importance of controlling your emotions and actions, especially when faced with situations that can lead to difficult mistakes. I've also learned that confusing emotions can come from within, not just from relationships with others. Instead of avoiding or seeking false comfort, it's important to face yourself and find a way to solve the root of the problem. My advice to you is to always be honest with your feelings, but also set clear boundaries. No matter the circumstances, don't let moments of weakness lead you in the wrong direction, because the consequences sometimes affect not only you, but also the people you love. Know how to cherish the relationships around you and nurture them with sincerity and responsibility. Don't let wrong actions or temporary emotions erode the trust that has been built over time. Sometimes a small decision is enough to change a whole life. For me, Lucas's passing was not just a temporary solution, but also a strong reminder of the value of self-awareness and mindfulness in action. Life is not always easy, but difficulties and mistakes are also the way for us to grow and learn to love ourselves and those around us. Since then, I've made the most of every day with William, trying to build a complete family. I know the cracks of that day will always be part of the past, but I believe that with effort and sincerity, I can still do the best for myself and the people I love. Thanks to everyone for listening to my story. I've enjoyed every moment of sharing this goodbye, and I hope to see you again.